episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to a very special episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. This is hard for me to grasp, but it has been 2 years since the brutal quadruple homicides at the University of Idaho. Of course, the victims are foremost in our minds. You've got Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. I'm going to try to do the show tonight, if we can pull it off without using the accused killer's name, even though there's a little bit of news, but we can just call him the accused killer. Phil Waters, who's investigated over 400 homicides, refers to him as the evil doer, but the guy has not been convicted yet, but nothing is looking too good for him at this point. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce the best guests, and some come from STS Nation. Cindy Hollenbeck, top right. You see there a longtime Moscow resident, originally from Binghamton, New York, where it snows a lot. She now is in Pullman, Washington, but lived in Moscow for 2 decades, I believe. All 3 of her children graduated from Moscow High School, and she earned an MFA in creative writing from the University of Idaho. And while she was employed as a marketing professional at Washington State University, which is where the accused killer was getting his PhD, she now works as a freelance writer and editor. Next up, bottom left with the cool blue lighting and the Idaho. Is that an Idaho shirt you're wearing? Vandals. There you go.
Vandal gear.
Vandals. That is, of course, the mascot at the University of Idaho. You've got Linda Moser. She is a native of Moscow and a longtime resident of the state of Idaho. She grew up in the farmland of the Genesee Valley and is currently an employee of the University of Idaho, where she has worked in the College of Engineering for the past 8 years. Go Vandals. And then last but certainly not least, you've got Cindy Brinkman, bottom right. She's a native of Roseville, Minnesota. She went out to the University of Idaho to finish her undergraduate work and completed her master's there as well. She works for the Civil Engineering Department as a research scientist, and she used to live at 500 Queen Road during both her undergraduate and master's degrees, and said she used to park next to the house on 1122 King Road every single day. Cindy Hollenbeck, you've been with us from the beginning, and, our original true crime story is Dan Markel, who's a FSU law professor that was murdered in a murder for hire plot. But this story came up right after we started covering that, and there was just crazy interest in this story. At one point at the very beginning, we had Dr. Ann Burgess, a living legend, on with Dr. Gary Bricado, and they profiled the accused killer before he was ever caught, and the profile that they gave was chillingly accurate to the person they eventually arrested. But Cindy Hollenbeck, you've been with us that long. Just what's the mood like tonight in Moscow? I know you're in Pullman, but you've got a pulse on that. And how are you feeling this evening?
Well, when I reached out to some people in addition to Cindy and Linda, to come talk, one of my friends who's probably is a writing instructor. I went to graduate school with him at U of I, and he was reluctant to participate because he said he was too emotional. And another person didn't want to. And I do think it's because it's such an emotional experience for everyone. And I've been following Xana Kernodle's brother posted something beautiful on Twitter, and I've been reposting all day. So everywhere it seems.
Do you have that handy? Could you read it to us?
Oh, sure. He posted a beautiful photo, and it said, the loss is still as painful. Oh, of course, now it went away.
You'll get it back. Let me go to Linda. We'll go.
Okay, go ahead. I'll find it.
Linda, obviously you're wearing your Vandals shirt. Things have changed there since these murders. But what are your feelings tonight as 2 years have now passed?
Well, we're still Vandal strong, and we're holding. And we've got a beautiful memorial on campus now for not only the victims of the Idaho 4 murder case, but everyone of students or people who have passed away that are part of the Vandal family. We call them the Vandal family because we are like a family. We care for each other, and it's a solemn feeling, but it's also a feeling of hope and healing. I did go to the memorial last year on this date, and it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. It was so warm, and the feeling of community. I didn't want to leave. Everybody started to disperse when it was over, and I'm like, no, I want to stay a little longer because there's such warmth here, so much love, and that's what this community is about. And we love our people.
Yeah, we were the COE and I were in Idaho this past summer. That's a special place. It's beautiful. And I know Moscow is no different. There is going to be a vigil tonight. Obviously, it's a bit earlier there, set for 6 p.m. It's going to be where what Linda was referring to at the Vandal Healing Garden on the U of I campus. It's going to, be all about sharing memories, writing notes to honor the lives. The student union put out a statement in an Instagram post today at the University of Idaho saying, it's hard to believe that 2 years have passed since we lost 4 amazing Vandals, Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kayla. That just gave me chills because these are fellow students. Cindy with an I. There's Cindy with a Y and Cindy with an I. So Cindy with an I, just to complicate life. Cindy with an I, tell us a little bit about the Healing Garden and obviously what you are thinking about tonight, 2 years after this.
I actually have, I've not been to the Healing Garden yet.
Wow.
But I had plans to, but I have not made it there. It just seems like 2 years has gone by really quickly. It seems like it was just yesterday. And and all of the people that contacted me from all over the world said, what is happening in Moscow, Idaho? And no one knew of Moscow, Idaho until these murders happened.
Yeah,
truly. But it just, I didn't have a lot of interaction with other people today, so I don't have any insight into much.
Yeah, and Cindy with an I, Cindy with an I. Just take us back 2 years when you got this news. Where were you? What was your immediate reaction? Obviously, they didn't know who it was right away. What was your emotional state after hearing that 4 students were murdered in such a vicious way?
It just brought me back to living over there and how scary that area is, just because it's pretty dark, and knowing that, that's where I lived for a long time, and having a lot of people contact me and asking what's going on. Are you okay? I said, yes, I'm okay. It just happens to be where I lived for many years. So it was scary that he would even find that area. It's it's a dead end road, and for some reason he was able to find that area. So just very scary experience for sure.
The COE is still loading in some photos here, but this is Ethan Chapin. Incredibly, sadly, that he is a one of 3. He's a triplet, and so now his 2 remaining siblings, you see them there, have to go it alone through the rest of this thing we call life. So that's it's another brutal tragedy with a ripple effect, which we always see with victims and their families. Linda, let's just go back the other way now. So Linda Moser, same thing. Where were you when we got the news November 13th of 2022. And were you scared for a period of time, not knowing who the accused killer was right away?
Well, I got the vandal alert like we all did, and it was a Sunday, I remember. No details about it, just other than that it was a homicide and it was off campus. I got a text from a friend of mine who knows the family, and that what kind of crime it was. Actually, some of us actually knew because people were texting each other, and that it was a stabbing type of event. Because nobody knew, that was not released into the public yet. And I remember the next few days, Moscow's pretty casual. You know, you get in your car and you drive away. Now, right after that, I would get in my car and immediately lock the doors. I'd check the front door, the back door, the side door, check windows. I mean, Moscow is still a low crime place, but you are very spooked by that. And they really beefed up the security on campus, which that was a little bit scary, because then you start seeing more campus security people. But they wanted to make people feel more secure, like, don't worry about this, we're handling it. But it was definitely very frightening, very bewildering at the time, I remember.
Yeah. And Linda, there's a question from our friend of the show, Ida Shaw. JD, what's the population of Moscow, Idaho? Small community, ? Is it mostly college students? It's a very tight-knit community. Do you know how many people are currently living there roughly?
We swell by about 7,000 people when school's in session. So I'm trying to remember the last census. Was it like 26,000, 27,000? I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, population about 27,000.
25,000.
25,000, yeah, of permanent residents. So it's a little bit of a transient population here.
Yeah, and Cindy, sorry about that. Cindy Hollenbeck, same thing. I mean, where were you 2 years ago? We've had you on the show since, but just let everybody know. And again, at that time, there was a killer on the loose. Police and prosecutors obviously think they had the right guy. But where were you and your immediate reaction?
I remember exactly, because I moved to Pullman 3 years ago, so I was here in this house, and I don't get vandal alerts, but I saw it somehow, and as you all remember, all it said was one person unconscious, and so I had called my ex-husband because we shared news. And I said, did you see this? Because obviously he still lives in Moscow, and that's where my son was living half time. And he said, no. And then later the rest came in. And I will tell you, living in this community for so long, I never locked my doors. I know it's such a cliche, but we just didn't have to. Even the 20 years I lived in Moscow, I think one time I left the doors open and someone took like a phone charger and some cash, like nothing like this, right? And then once that happened, oh my gosh, my imagination ran away with me. I was imagining like the character from the Scream movies, and I locked my doors every day, checked them every day. I was on such high alert. I was so frightened. And I was driving to Moscow to pick up my son. And then at Thanksgiving, my daughter and I went to a place called the Ale House, and it was Thanksgiving week. And we were every person who passed me, I was like, oh my gosh, we could be eating dinner next to this person, because even though the police said it was a targeted attack, and we know now all this, but at the time we didn't. I wasn't afraid, but I was terrified at the same time. It was like, okay, I trust them, but I was really, really afraid. And I lived by myself. I have my dog, we had to put my dog down, but I had a German Shepherd. Thank you. And I thought, okay, well, at least Gus is here to protect me. But we were terrified. And anytime I drove onto campus, because we learned immediately that it was a PhD student. I was working at the grad school. I texted our executive assistant and I said, it was one of our TAs. And he's like, I know. And I said, I can't process this. And so, yes, I was afraid. I know right where I was. I know who I called, and it was a really frightening time. Really frightening time.
Yeah, I remember it well, sadly, but I wasn't there. Cindy with an I from T. Duclos. It's changed the way we live. We lock our doors. I'm very worried about my windows, having my drapes open too long whenever it's dark. I hurry up and close my windows. It might not seem like a lot, but other people clearly are traumatized by this in the greater community. Cindy with an I mean, do you feel the same way? What Cindy just said, do you feel less safe, or now that do you have to lock your doors in order to feel like a sense of calm?
Yeah, I'm very much like the other Cindy. You know, I live alone, and you know it. And sometimes I just wake up thinking, is my door locked? Or the feeling of, you know, I'm constantly on alert just because I live where I live. It's, you know, no one should go to that area unless you're going to my house. So it just is always looking out the window, who's driving up, or if I hear something, you know, to make sure that my doors are locked. And I don't, you know, I keep plastic on my windows just because I don't like people looking in.
Yeah. So
it's not that I still think this town is a very safe town. I just think this is an awful event.
Yeah.
However, it's a very safe town. It just
there's some more recent interviews with Stephen and Christy Goncalves, but there's an interview that I just wanted to play with Ethan Chapin's mother. Of course, this again is Ethan here, one of the triplets. But let me play this. We'll just listen to it. It's from a podcast. I'll be honest, I don't remember the name, but the guy's an actor, according to the COE, who I've never heard of, from a show I never heard of. But here we go. This is Stacy Chapin. Obviously, we're trying to think about the victims tonight, 2 years after the quadruple murders at the University of Idaho. Again, Stacy Chapin, Ethan's mother.
And it might make me, I've held myself together. Take your time. No, that's a good question. You just, you know, because his physical being, it's funny. We tell this story of like what to do with him, his physical, like his ashes, like we all wear him. We all had like custom jewelry made that they put a little tiny bit of, you know, so, like, we just have done things like that. Where is he? He's in a good spot, right? Like he's no longer under my arm. I don't have to carry. I can acknowledge that he's gone. We had an incredible, 20 years together, but okay. But where is he? I'm not sure where he is. He's up in heaven somewhere.
Absolutely.
He's happy. Yeah. We're glad Xana's with him. We were fortunate to spend a summer with Xana. She was super sweet. Mm-hmm. We've kind of made it a policy to not talk about the other kids because honestly, as a mom, I don't want anybody to talk about Ethan.
Yeah.
I feel very protective. Like I reserve the right to talk about my son. Yeah. And so, but we did, she was beautiful. It's weird. You just think whatever makes you comfortable, right. In the process. And so, the fact that they're together, that's wonderful. I don't know,
Yeah.
that is an interesting question.
I know.
Yeah.
No,
right. At the time, I just didn't know what to do with him, but you go through this, we're a year and a half out and he, his spirit is up there. It's funny. Jim and I were talking the other day and I didn't realize that we were doing the same thing, but like he drives a half hour to the warehouse where, our work is. Okay. And, I usually drive, my friend and I hired a trainer to work out, because that's the only thing that motivates me to get out and do it other than, aside from walking the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because we were just the other night, we were like that 30 minutes that it takes us to drive to town is like 30 minutes that we just try to give to Ethan. Mm-hmm. You play his favorite song or something that, you just go there. You don't want to forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
You know, you just give him a half an hour every day. We genuinely, you know, there's a couple of songs that are tough to get through. You know, but you don't want to forget him. I don't want to ever forget that he was, you know, such a huge part of our life, but it dims a little bit, and that scares me a little bit. I don't ever want his light to, you know, go out. But so you just look for little things that, you know, try to make you feel better. You know, I think it makes us all feel better that he's, you know, somewhere with Xana drinking a Bud Light Lime somewhere, because that was his, you know. I mean, you know, you just hang on to those things.
Yeah.
You know.
By the way, that is Taylor Lautner from Twilight. I've heard of Twilight. I have no idea who he is, but he's obviously an actor. Linda, I mean, she literally said, you know, we wear him. They had jewelry made, and you listen to that, and I'm a parent of 3. It's almost hard to listen because it's so devastating. What was your reaction?
Well, my reaction was you carry the people with you that you love, even when they are not in this earthly realm anymore. I carry my dad with me, and I talk to him still, and I say, Dad, you and me together forever, you know. And I'm sure that a parent who has lost and not just lost a child, it's not like they just passed away. Their lives were taken in a violent and horrible, tragic way. So it's even harder to deal with and process. And those memories are both comforting and also difficult. I wanted to ask her, what was the song? What was one of the songs that was his favorite? What song makes you think of him, or you know, makes you feel connected? Because we can still connect with our loved ones, I believe. I think the spirit is forever. And that's why, you know, these 4 young people they're immortal now, and the world knows their name. And
I'm sorry, Linda, but COE, people are asking the name of that podcast, so and I don't know it. But that's the chief of everything. She runs the show behind the scenes. That's my wife. Yeah.
Okay.
Cindy, again, I mean, you just watched that. Cindy with a Y. It's tough to watch. Obviously, she is extremely traumatized, as any mother would be, but particularly a mother of triplets. A third of her life is vanished in an instant. What do you think while watching that?
Well, one thing, it amazes me how much grace she has. And she doesn't usually break down, which I find amazing. Like, people say, I've lost people and they're like, "Oh, you're so strong." No, you're not. You find out how strong you are when you have to be. It's not a choice.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you have to deal with it. And every time she talks, every time I watch her, my heart breaks for her. And at the same time, I just can't get over how gracious she is. She's an amazing human being. I watched, what did they have? Some kind of a video about, you know, they grow tulips. And so they have that particular tulip just for Ethan.
Yes.
I think that when tragedy happens, and it's the same thing with Lauren McCluskey, who was murdered by her boyfriend. The parents have started a foundation, and it's something, her promise is something like, "I'll believe you if you say you're being stalked." Like, we know so much more about this case than we knew at the beginning. And obviously it doesn't seem as though they knew they were being stalked. You know, there's so much that we'll find out later, but it's like, I just watched Stacy and I think that's somebody I'd like to be like, you know. And I can't imagine losing a child. They don't even have a word in the English language to describe it, really. Like, it's the worst thing that could happen. And she's amazing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You got widower, but nothing for children. From Wise Child, The Boy in Blue is a book that Stacy Chapin wrote after the fact. And then you got Chelsea Whitaker here. I love how Ethan's mom does not express any vengeance or anger. That's a really interesting point. Cindy with an I, yeah, you don't hear her because we're going to listen to Steve and Christy Gonzalez, who have a little bit different take. But with Stacy Chapin, you don't hear her even mention his name, like we're trying not to do tonight. She just is remembering her son. That's pretty admirable, Cindy with an I, but I don't know that I could do it myself.
Yeah, I mean, trying not to give power to the person that hurt you.
Yeah.
And when you give that person that power, that takes away your ability to heal, and that doesn't need to have a name.
Yeah.
And like Cindy with the Y mentioned, I signed that promise because I went to a woman's defense class so that we learn how to defend ourselves and learn where our strength is, so that if something does happen, I have the ability to hopefully you never have to use those, but have the ability to do so. And yeah, mentioning his name, it all came back to light here just recently that there's been a lot of articles and photos of him, but not photos of the ones that passed.
Yeah. This is obviously Kaylee. Parents, as you would expect, and the sister devastated by her loss. I mean, just look how pretty and handsome Ethan is in the prime of their lives, and it is snatched away from them in the most evil manner possible. A little bit of news, just a very little bit. So, for those who do not know, Judge is no longer presiding over the case, and he announced this week that he is retiring. The guy looks fantastic. He's 69. I thought he was in his 50s, if that. But so he's retiring. The trial is still set for August of 2025, and a couple other things I'm going to hit on. But let's go now to this is Steve and Christy Gonzalez, courtesy of KHQ TV in Spokane. And this is Kaylee's parents here.
What did you make of that when defense made that argument about him having fear and anxiety?
I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Say we have the right person here, and you know, and he is tried and he is convicted. You know, did my daughter know the way she was going to go? Did Maddie know? Did any of the kids know the way they were going to go? Did they know that they had 2 hours left, 1 hour left, 5 minutes left?
That's just obviously a small portion of it, and I've got some other. Stephen goes on. Actually, this is Christy. She goes on to say, "It's been very hard, and I don't know if it's just the accumulation of the trial, or if it's just missing Kaylee, or if it's just being strung through all these disastrous procedures. But it's been really hard. I've been missing her so much, just dying to hear her voice, just to, walk in the door, just constantly looking at pictures. I found some baby pictures of her." Linda Moser, back to you on this one. I mean, she's literally searching for baby photos and happened to find some, I guess, that she hadn't discovered before. Again, I mean, it's just heartbreaking. They're obviously a little more animated than Stacy Chapin, but when you watch it, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking about how that must feel, because every year goes by, you have an anniversary of, on this day I did this thing with my child, and I had this memory with them. And when that day comes around after they've passed, it is very hard to face that day. And the fact that she mentioned the voice, that her wanting to hear her voice, that's the one thing when you lose someone that is so hard to bear, is thinking, I will not hear this person's voice again unless I hear it in a recording. but I won't hear them say, "Hi, Mom. I love you, Mom." Or, you know, that's an extremely hard thing to face. And our hearts go out to all the families, especially when you hear them express these kinds of feelings that are so difficult.
Yeah. This again is Judge, the best name for a judge ever. There's another clip. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what this is, but I'm going to play it. It's got Kaylee on it. COE pulled it. Let's take a look.
Honestly, I am not doing well. It hasn't been easy for me. It's been very hard. And I don't know if it's just the accumulation of the trial and missing Kaylee, or if it's just missing Kaylee, or just being, strung through all this just disastrous procedures. But it's been really hard, really hard. I've been missing her just so much, just dying to hear her voice, just, to walk in the door, just constantly looking at pictures, constantly looking at, I found some baby pictures of her.
Yeah.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Cindy Hollenbeck, what your take on what you just saw? She just flat out says, "I'm not doing well."
When I watched that, I feel like if it were me, and I obviously don't know, but I just know myself as a person, and I feel like I would act way more like the Goncalves family than I would Stacy. I just know that. I watch it and I don't want to talk about myself much, but I'll just say this. When my brother passed away when I was a teenager, the first 2 years are the hardest because you are still processing. And you don't really start healing. And this is a psychological thing. This is not my own take. This is what I've read about. And I kept seeing him everywhere. Like I would see someone who looked like him and be like, oh, it's actually really tragic. And I can't imagine. It's so interesting how close Maddie and Kaylee were, and all those pictures of them together. And as children, it's tragic because the worst part, as you probably could guess, is yes, they're immortal, as Linda said. The whole world knows these people, and at the same time, they don't have any future. The perpetrator took away their future, and that's unbelievably unfair. Not just for them, but for, like you said, Joel, the ripple effect. These people were loved. They were human beings. And when I watch the Goncalves family, I just think that's how I would react, and they would probably be dragging me. They probably wouldn't want to interview me.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, these were happen to be exceptionally good looking kids, just young, not even close to the prime of their life. They look like they could have been, models for some, clothing company. And I think that obviously also resonated with all of America and globally, because people are just absolutely glued to the story when it was unfolding. Cindy with an I, the trial set for August of 2025. Some don't think it's going to happen. Just this past week, the accused killer was trying to, his attorneys were trying to get the death penalty as a possibility removed from the case. If it is a capital crime here and he could face a death penalty, a lot of people are saying that it could be even longer before the trial starts. Your thoughts on that? And, that obviously just prolongs the agony for the families too.
Yeah, just they don't have any closure, and sometimes the best way to move through it is having the closure. I just had a friend that was also murdered, and they finally went through the court case, and it was dragged out for 2.5 years, and it just put so much pain and you have to feel over and over and over again every time that that the heartbreak, and then you refeel it and you refeel it, and
Yeah.
any ability to heal.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. Very good point. Linda Moser, again, I don't want to focus on the accused killer here, but one thing that everyone asks still is 3 letters. Why? Have you given any thought, Linda Moser, to why this happened?
I've given a lot of thought. One thing that's a little dismaying to me is hearing all the theories out there, and here's why, and oh, this was related to something to do with drug trafficking. It's just, I don't like to hear what other people's theories are. I just like to take the information myself. I just have my own thoughts about it, that there was some kind of focus on one of the girls, which some people suspect it was Maddie, that he met her through possibly the Mad Greek. He was vegan, and they served vegan cuisine there, and she was a waitress there, a server there. That might be how he connected with her, and maybe thought, wow, she's somebody that's out of my reach. Possibly got some kind of obsession going. I don't really know. We're going to find out more details when details of the trial come out, but I just think there was some focus on her. Some people think the focus was Kaylee. I don't know. But I just think there was some attempt to possibly reach out to her, and it was not there. There was never a connection made. So then we heard that he stalked and tried to, I don't know how he found out where they live, but he must have found that out because he was connected with the Wi-Fi and was supposedly there. And I just think that it all came because of an obsession. And that's how he was into crime, like just studying the criminal mindset. And it's possible that the obsession took him in this evil and awful direction. I don't know. That's just me throwing my idea out there that's possibly where that came from.
T. Duclos, who I think is coming to us from Moscow, says, I believe after what they said that he was watching them from Pennsylvania before he ever moved out here. And that's what's spooky about the whole dang thing. That is really creepy if that's the case. We don't know that to be a fact yet. But Cindy Hollenbeck, have you thought about why this person would want to do this? And do you think that he was targeting, it's kind of up in the air. People say Kaylee or Maddie. Do you think it was one or the other?
Yeah, and obviously we don't know for sure, but as you know, Joel, I've been following this since it started. I downloaded every single thing, read over the 50-page affidavit that was written really well, 30-page, whatever it was. And I tend to try to stick to the facts, listen to Ann Burgess and other podcasts. And it sounds as though this person was targeting Maddie, which would make sense with the order of the murders. And Linda and I talked a little bit last night to kind of just refresh ourselves with the older news versus the newer news. And I don't know. When I watch the court things and I see him, it makes me sick to my stomach, because I do think that perhaps he was an incel. And I don't watch a lot of the stuff like Linda's saying, that theories. So this is really just me and some of the stuff I've learned. I think that he was very much taken by surprise that Ethan was there that night. Did not expect that. And when I'm on podcasts and there's people saying things like, he's innocent, he's innocent, he's innocent. Well, maybe in the eyes of the law until we have proof.
Yeah.
But when I met Chief Fry after everything happened, I treated him like Elvis. I ran up to him and I was like, oh my God, 7 weeks. You guys did such an amazing job. And I just don't know who else it could possibly be. And why There's so much we could talk about. I won't go into it because we'll be here
Well,
forever.
what was his reaction when you thanked him and said, because
he-
during the time, if you remember, people were really coming down, little
Oh, yeah.
podunk Moscow, they're inept, and they did it. They figured this out, which was complicated.
Yep.
You know, in a fairly quick amount of time. But so, what was his reaction to you thanking him?
He was delightful. And the thing is I'm a Moose member, and he had come to the Moose Lodge because we were giving out Tommy Moose. They're stuffed animals you give to kids. So if there's something going on at home, domestic violence, the stuffed animals make them feel better. And they were presenting stuffed animals to the Moscow PD. And when I saw him across the room, I immediately ran over and I touched his arm because that's how I do things. And he is ripped. Like he felt
Really?
like he was made of brick. And I
Really?
said, oh my gosh, Chief Fry, you're my hero and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sorry that people criticized you guys. You did it. And he was just so humble and sweet. He had a huge smile on his face. He's probably my age. So I felt like I was talking to like a peer. And I did hear all the criticism. I've been on podcasts and they say Moscow and they say Palaus and they get all this stuff wrong. And that's fine. I understand. But just yesterday, I watched a different podcast and they said he was so smart because the first thing he did was say, we need more people to help us. He didn't say, we'll do this on our own and you guys can screw off. He knew that they needed help and everybody came together, Pullman Police, FBI, to get this done in 7 weeks. Where, Joel, I know the night before he was caught, I said to you, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, and boom, they got him.
Yeah.
So
who knew that Chief Fry was ripped? He looked like, you know, he might like a pastry or two. Who knew?
Yeah, he's ripped.
Wow. It's interesting. If people in 3 dimensions are different than you see them in, 1 dimension on the screen. Does any of the panel know how the surviving roommates are doing? Do any of you know by chance?
I have not heard. I think they're laying low. Because they've, especially Dylan has had a lot of criticism, like,
Right.
why, and okay, some people are fainters. I suspect that my daughter's that way. She has a heart condition and if she's sleep deprived or whatever, she will faint dead away. I think she fainted at some point, was unconscious and didn't. That's why no one was called. And apparently, according to Mr. Goncalves, she was the one that was unconscious. Why the call went out? They used her phone to call 911.
Oh,
Was unconscious. That's what I heard.
Okay.
I heard him say in an interview, she was the one that was unconscious. She's a very sensitive person. I don't know what's going on with Bethany other than that they think they gave her a subpoena about something. I haven't heard anything. They're kind of not really so much in the news. Has anybody else heard anything?
I haven't heard anything about Bethany, but I have heard Dylan's not doing well. And
Yes.
She's in therapy and she, of course, she has every right not to be doing well. And she's keeping a low profile. That all makes sense. And I want to reiterate what Linda said, because again, last night on this podcast where they were talking about this, all these people come in with their criticism. And I said, look, I think she was only 18. And I tried to think about myself at 18. I was an absolute mess. But I think she needs an enormous amount of empathy and grace, and I will not tolerate anyone criticizing her when I'm on a podcast or like when I'm in the chat, because we don't know what we would do in the situation. And also they've done a lot of study about her, and yes, Linda, maybe she fainted, but also this idea, nobody would have expected anyone in the house. It wouldn't have been a big surprise. She had no idea what was going on upstairs. So I just cut her a lot of slack, and I hope she gets the healing that she needs, because it's awful what happened to the survivors as well.
Yeah, people can be cruel, and there was plenty of people who were blaming the 2 surviving roommates for either not calling 911 or turning a blind eye to it. You cannot, and I've talked to numerous people, from law enforcement to psychologists, who tell you that, when you're in shock, which I'm sure she was, you just don't react the way you think someone's going to react. And I think this is the sentiment now for most. I feel terrible for those 2 girls. I wish them healing from Zoe 413. Cindy with an I mean, you're on the University of Idaho campus right now. What has the impact been, in your opinion, on the students there?
I think there was a lot of fear
Yeah.
and not knowing, and you know, I know it did bring Moscow together quite a bit, because that we had to come together as one, or you know, there would be a lot of stragglers out there on the side that didn't have any support, and I think, you know, we needed that support in order just to make sure that we feel okay, and especially as a woman, I think, you know, that it's scary. It's definitely scary out there. And hopefully, you know, we can stand by one another and by women and feel safe.
Yeah.
You know, as an isolated incident, it's still isolated, but it doesn't mean it didn't impact others.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that has really bothered people is that the accused killer in court so far has been able to wear a suit. For some reason, the state's gone along with that, where most people in his shoes are in a jumpsuit. But I'm curious, Linda Moser, to you, how, if at all, has this changed your perspective just on the criminal justice system, the process that you have to go through? Again, it's been 2 years today, and now this trial is set for August, but you know, there is a possibility it's going to get delayed beyond then. So has this changed the way you look at our criminal justice system, which everyone says is the best in the world, but still has flaws?
I still have hope and trust in the system. I've seen that it has resulted in someone being accused, and with a, you know, if you read the arrest affidavit, it's very detailed, and it's a lot of information there that there's a reason that this person was arrested. If you go by simply that, you could say, well, he must be guilty. However, you've got to look at the fact that everything needs to be seen. You don't make a determination about a crime such as this, that's so complicated, that's so high profile, without hearing everything. And we haven't even heard much at all about it, other than just what's been released to the public, because they have released so few details. But I'm feeling hopeful. I know they're looking at trying to remove the death penalty off of the table as in terms of a penalty or punishment. And you wonder if maybe the defense is kind of preparing for a guilty verdict, and they just don't want that to be part of the, you know, you wonder these things.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to wait. We're going to have to be patient, because we don't know when it's actually going to, they've got a trial date kind of set tentatively, but you know, some of these things take a long, long time.
Yeah. By the way, in the last hearing, the judge was talking about how Idaho, which just recently had a failed execution attempt with a guy named Thomas Creech, and they're set to try again. But he was talking about how the state of Idaho is in the process of building the facility for a firing squad. And if he is in fact guilty of these charges, I don't think there's anyone that probably deserves it more than this guy. I don't know how I personally feel about a firing squad, because that's, I don't know, kind of nuts to me, but, you know, that's what the governor has signed off on. How about Cindy Hollenbeck? I mean, just, and again, we're just kind of sharing thoughts and memories, 2 years since the brutal murders. Actually, the COE just reminded me. So Steve Goncalves had a pretty ominous message for the accused here. Let's listen to this, and then we'll continue on for a little while.
I think if you want to make an impact, if you want to make a brutal, raw statement and try to get people's attention, because nobody pays attention to you, those 4 beautiful people would make a heck of a statement.
Jealousy.
Total jealousy.
I think it was total jealousy.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that you could say to Brian Koberger, what would it be?
Pick the wrong family. You know, there's no right family for something like this, but I think that
you will burn in hell.
Final question. Just want to give you guys an open mic, whatever you guys would like to say to our viewers tonight.
We just want to thank everybody. I'm sure everybody knows about the GoFundMe that we have out there for the trip to Boise this summer. And we would like to thank everybody that's been donating to that. We're almost to our goal, and, we couldn't be there without everybody's help.
So I thought it was Steve that said it was
What did you make of
actually
that when defense
Christy.
made that argument about him
Excuse me. It was actually Christy who said burn in hell, those 3 words. From this is obviously the family here. 2 years since we lost 2 beautiful souls. It's still hard to believe that we're living our life every day as a normal people, but someone who truly deserves to be here living a happy life is not able to do that. Kaylee and Maddie were the kind of people who would always make you feel loved and appreciated, who could make you smile, and you will feel comfortable with them. To lose them was such a hard thing. These 2 years went by so fast. I'm waking up every morning with thoughts that they could never wake up like we do. I'm still devastated about this, and sending all my love to families in all the Idaho community, the Goncalves family page. And you see these other, the Made with Kindness Foundation. So obviously everyone, as one would expect, is struggling. And the 2-year mark is obviously a big one. And time continues to pass, and the pain is still there. Cindy Hollenbeck, I used to be a reporter, and people love to hate the media. But I think they did a pretty good job keeping this in the spotlight. By the way, I love to hate the media too, myself sometimes. But what do you think of the job the media has done keeping this out there in the forefront? And shout out to my man, Kevin Fixler. He's 2-time investigative reporter of the year in Idaho with the Idaho Statesman, and he's been covering this, and he's always, shooting me stuff to keep me updated. But he is like a reporter's reporter, and he's been breaking a ton of news on this and continues to. But Cindy, with the Y, your thoughts on the media coverage of this?
Oh, I think they did a great job. And I was, in addition to getting to meet you and Ron Leocardi and Anjanette Levy came to Moscow last year, and I'd had a Twitter relationship with her, and I ended up being able to meet her, and we had lunch, and it was fabulous. And I think that in addition to her, she's from News Nation, Brian Enton, they've handled it so well and with so much empathy. I don't know. I was actually really happy, and I think that they've done a really good job. And when your CEO asked me, if I knew anything about the vigil, the first thing I did was start looking, and it appeared later than I wanted, but it doesn't matter. Like, the Argonaut does stuff, the Evergreen, all of us, all of the local, people in local media. And I don't have any complaints. I know that the people who lived near the house were annoyed because of all the media coverage. It's certainly understandable. And somebody came here and was berated, and they held up signs telling her to get out. I understand that too. But overall, my opinion is they've done a really good job. And I very, very rarely do I choose not to watch or listen to something. So, and I think they've done a good job. I mean, I'm a Twitter fan, despite the owner, and that's where I get a lot of my news. And so I think it's been positive from my perspective.
Glad to hear that. So Cindy with an I, we talked about kind of the reaction from students, but has anything tangibly changed at the University of Idaho? Is there more security? Are there more locks on doors? Things of this nature that you've noticed at the university?
I know that they've, made sure that people are aware that there are, if you don't want to walk alone, there's a number you can call. We have phones on campus, and so that you can, if you don't have a cell phone and you need to get to a phone, or somebody had taken your phone, you have, safe walks anywhere to your car, to your dorm. The presence, after a while, the presence of the police wasn't as often, but they still go past quite often, because my building is right on one of the main streets, 6th Street, and I do see them go past quite often. And I just and having the it's called, I think, SAS is the class to be able to learn self-defense, and the alerts, vandal alerts, have really helped connect people so that they had immediate information and knowledge of what was happening on campus, if something was or wasn't, or even just a power outage. But and they're very good with communication, and I think that communication has gotten a lot stronger and better.
Julia's asking, there was a dog in the house. We're a very dog friendly show here, and the dog was unharmed. I'm not sure where the Cindy Hollenbeck, do we know where the dog is now by any chance?
I don't remember. I only remember that his name was Murphy, and I think everyone's puzzled as to why we're glad, but
why
it
he
was
Not
weird.
boyfriend of one of the girls.
That would make sense. Jack,
given
maybe,
the
I
dog.
think was his name.
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, it says
That makes sense, Linda.
yeah, it says here Murphy is with Jack. That's what STS Nation. Best guest, better community. They're on top of everything. Linda Moser, as we start to wrap this up, I mean, how do you want the victims here to be remembered? It's personal to you guys. You're from this area. These were, again, kids in the prime of their life. How would you like to see them be remembered? I mean, the difficulty is, as every year passes, we see this with 9/11, just as an example, you get a little more distant from it. So what do we need to do to remember them?
I would like to see a yearly memorial every year on this date, to be a remembrance of them, not to think about the tragedy and the terrible things that happened, but just to think of their lives, like a celebration of their lives, and to visit that beautiful memorial garden and just have a place for people to meet, for people to leave tributes, to share their thoughts and feelings. And I just think that's very, very important. I had, this is all a little bit off the subject slightly, is I went to the site of the King Road house because I was wanting to have them preserve it for evidentiary value. So I ended up on the news on a few different channels. Apparently they didn't need to keep the house, and it wasn't because, okay, well, I want the memory of the students in the house. No, the memory of them is not in that house. The memory of them is in people's hearts and in this community. That's why the healing garden is so important. I wanted them to preserve the house because I thought that it would help when the trial came, but apparently there was no need to keep it. So they did dismantle it. They literally hid every little shred of the house somewhere where no one knows where this site is, so that people can't go get, souvenirs of it and things like that. But I just think the yearly remembrance, like we're doing tonight, and talking about these young people and their families and the legacy that they've left, that's what I'd like to see happen and to continue.
Cindy Hollenbeck, every time something like this happens, you hear people say things like, life is so precious, life is so short. How has it, if at all, has it affected the way you look at life?
Well, since I was 18, I've looked at life as being incredibly unpredictable, and that it can change in a second. What I have done since that age, and to the dismay of many people who aren't comfortable with it, but I tell everybody that I love them. And I always say, you don't get a second chance to do that. And when after my brother passed away, I remember feeling so resentful, because they say life goes on, it doesn't go on for the people who lose somebody. It goes on for everyone else. You know, they get to wake up every morning and be happy and whatever, and you're carrying around this pain. And so I feel like you need to be open with it. You need to be vulnerable to people, and you need to tell people you love them every chance you get. Like, I don't like when people have, you know, they're estranged from family members for some stupid argument. And I'm like, I learned really early that life is short. And I agree 100% with Linda. I love the idea of commemorating them because like many shows, you know, I watch a lot of true crime. They always say they shouldn't be defined by the tragedy that happened to them at the hands of some a-hole. They should be remembered for the lovely people they were. It sounds like they were all really good people. They were smart, they were capable, they were just enjoying life. I want to be able to remember them that way. And hopefully after what happens in August, that's what we can remember, is just these wonderful people. Not to diminish what happened, but just to focus on the really positive aspects of who they were.
And Cindy, you'll get with an I, you'll get the final word tonight. Again, you're at the University of Idaho, and there you see all four of them in one photo. Absolutely beautiful. You know, not even, they're technically adults, but we all know that they're kids if you're of a certain age. So, you know, I was going to ask, you're on the campus. How do you think this generation that we're looking at right now, the younger generation, has processed all this, and just what do you think the community needs to do to continue to heal? That's Cindy with an I.
I think we, you know, I think we need to continue keeping them in our thoughts and our prayers, and also having the memorial and having other programs that don't just shove this under the rug like it didn't happen, because it did, and giving, you know, giving kids and adults and women and men all different kinds of, you know, training in order to hopefully have this not happen again. But at least, you know, if I have the skills and I'm prepared, I have less likely chance of falling victim. And I believe, you know, the campus is, you know, we're a very small town, and everybody knows everybody, especially with such a large fraternity and sorority population here.
Yeah.
Huge thanks to these three. Two of them currently living in Moscow. Cindy Hollenbeck's kids all went to Moscow High School, but she lives in Pullman, which is where the accused was doing his graduate work. And we made it through the entire show without saying his name and focusing on the victims. So kudos to everybody. We are covering, sadly, another horrific stabbing tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Eastern. Ellen Greenberg's parents are coming on, along with the former homicide prosecutor in Philadelphia and the private investigator for the family. This is just an absolute, in my opinion, miscarriage of justice. She was 27 years old. This happened in 2011. She was living with her fiance. She was stabbed 20 times, 10 to the front, 10 to the back, very back of her neck. 2 were post-mortem injuries, meaning she was already dead. They ruled it a homicide. They switched it to undetermined. And then ultimately it became an unaliving, incredibly. The case has never been investigated, as I said. They allowed the fiance's uncle as a prominent judge in the Philadelphia area that has ties to the now governor and once attorney general, Josh Shapiro. And you know, I titled the thumbnail, "It's Always Shady in Philadelphia." It's a city known for a lot of corruption. So please, and I've said this before, for some reason, the Ellen Greenberg shows never get the same numbers as our other shows, and I don't care about that. I mean, obviously we want to get good numbers, as any media outlet wants to get ratings, but it's more important to get the word out there. So if you can, please come tomorrow night, support the family. Her case was again put on inactive status by the Chester County DA, but there's a little more to it, so we'll find out tomorrow. But tonight obviously was all about Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. Here they are one final time. Let's put them up here. And with that, thanks again to the guests. We will see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Love you, America. Love you, Moscow. And love these four, and hope they get justice.